Habari za wakati mtazamaji wetu popote pale ulipo, zifuatazo ni habari za saa kutoka pa ITV. Jina langu ni Agnes Salmas, karibu. Baadhi ya walimu mkoani Ruvuma wamelalamika utaratibu wa serikali kuwalipa fedha zao za nauli ya likizo kwa madai umekuwa hauzingatii vigezo, ikiwa ni pamoja na kutopandishwa daraja ya mishahara kwa wakati, hali ambayo inawakatisha tamaa na kufundisha kwa tija na kuongeza ufaulu kwa wanafunzi.
Piro imekaa pale miaka na miaka, wao kazi yao ni kurenew tu kila mwaka, lakini hawafanyi utafiti, hawachimbe, hawafanyi chochote. Hiyo ni changamoto. Tunaomba serikali pia ifute hizo piro zisizofanywa kazi.
Unasemaje?
Tunaomba serikali ikishafuta, basi naamini wachimbaji wetu ambao wana nia ya kuchimba watakuja, wataomba leseni, wakishapata basi wataweka uwekezaji.
Kampuni ya Kambas Mining Limited imetawaliwa na changamoto juu ya uelewa wa wanakijiji katika kutambua tafsiri ya sheria ya tozo mbalimbali zinazotakiwa zilipwe ndani ya halmashauri.
Madini ya makaa ya mawe peke yake yanaweza kuchochea ukuaji wa uchumi wa mkoa na kuchochea ukuaji wa uchumi wa taifa letu. Sisi wenyewe ni mashuhuda, tumeona idadi kubwa ya magari makubwa ya mizigo ambayo inabeba makaa ya mawe kutoka katika migodi yetu hii miwili.
Kumrazi mtazamaji wa ITV, habari iliyopita ilikuwa ni kuhusiana na utafiti wa madini mkoani Ruvuma. Mkuu wa mkoa wa Dodoma Daktari Binilithi Mahenga amewataka wananchi mkoani humo kuendelea kushiriki katika kuchangia miradi ya maendeleo na kuacha dhana kuitegemea serikali, na kusisitiza kwamba michango ya wananchi bado inahitajika, hususan katika sekta ya afya.
Kwa kuwa tunajua ratiba zetu za kimasomo kwamba kila mwaka mwezi wa 9 watoto watafanya mitihani na wako watakaochaguliwa, hivyo ni lazima sasa tuanze maandalizi ya kuwapokea mapema. Kuanzia mwezi wa ngapi? Mwezi wa 2. Tumalizapo hawa shawapokea mwezi wa 2, tuanze kuandaa maandalizi kwa ajili ya kuwapokea wanafunzi wa mhula ujao.
Kutafsiri vizuri lile tamko la elimu bila malipo, na wengi wanalichukulia kama elimu bure. Lile tu maana yake halisi ni kwamba tusimchangishe mzazi kwa sababu tu mtoto anasoma pale, kwa sababu wazazi hawa hawafanani kivipato, lakini juu ya kuiendeleza elimu ni jukumu la kila Mtanzania. Hivyo ni jukumu la kila mwanakata ya Kibaigwa, sote kwa pamoja tukachangia maendeleo, tukajenga vyumba vya madarasa vya kutosha, madawati, na watoto wetu wakasoma.
Katibu utawala mkoa wa Lindi Bi Rehema Madenge amezitaka halmashauri za mkoa huo, wakala barabara vijijini na mijini na TANROADS kushirikiana kwa pamoja katika utendaji wa kazi wao ili kufikia malengo waliojiwekea katika barabara zao.
Lakini kwa tulipofika sasa hivi, ina maana mtapeleka mapendekezo ambayo ni ya kwenu kama TARURA, ambayo wadau wa mkoa hawajayapitia wakayapitisha, ambao sijui kama kweli yatakuwa ni ya mkoa au yatakuwa na ownership ya nani, kwa sababu TARURA ni sehemu ya mkoa. Kwa hiyo mapendekezo ya wadau wa mkoa ni lazima yawepo mle.
Kikubwa ni kuzingatia sheria za mikataba kama inavyosema, zile specification ambazo zinaongoza na ubora ambao natakiwa, ili aweze kujikuwa na nafasi zaidi ya kuaminiwa hata kwa kazi nyingine kutokana na ubora ambao atatekeleza.
Mwisho wa habari za saa kwa sasa. Habari za kimataifa kutoka Al Jazeera zinafuata.
Turkey responds with anger to President Trump's threat of economic devastation if it attacks Kurdish fighters in Syria. Hello, I'm Fuli Batiboya watching Al Jazeera live from Doha. Also ahead, an Iranian army plane with 16 people on board crashes near the capital, Tehran. Plus, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo meets the Saudi leadership in Riyadh on the latest leg of his Middle East tour. And Venezuela's opposition leader remains defiant after being arrested briefly for questioning the legitimacy of the presidency of Nicolas Maduro. Thank you for joining us. Turkey's presidential spokesman says the U.S. must honor its strategic relationship after President Donald Trump threatened to devastate Turkey's economy if its forces attacked Kurdish fighters in Syria. It's the latest political fallout from the U.S. leader's announcement that he plans to withdraw American forces from Syria. Trump tweeted, starting the long overdue pullout from Syria while hitting the little remaining ISIS territorial caliphate hard and from many directions, will attack again from existing nearby base if it reforms, will devastate Turkey economically if they hit Kurds, create 20-mile safe zone. Well, Trump's tweet follows the mobilization of the Syrian army around Manbij at the request of Kurdish YPG forces. Ankara is preparing for a long-planned offensive against the YPG. It views the group as a threat near its southern border. Sinem Koseoglu has more from Istanbul.
This is the first time that a U.S. official has threatened Turkey by devastating its economy. When you speak to the politicians in Ankara, they tell that even during the Cyprus crisis in 1959, despite the embargoes imposed by the United States to Turkey, no such language has been ever used. And until now, the Turkish reaction was about clarifying the distinction between the Kurds and the YPG and the PKK. This is what Turks have said in their social media accounts until now. And today in the late afternoon, Erdogan is expected to say something about this, but he has been taking it slow because he's receiving some briefs from his A-team in the foreign ministry, in the military and the intelligence. But of course, this breaking point between Turkey and the United States will have some reactions, mainly on the markets as well. The Turkish lira has lost some value against the dollar since the morning hours. But of course, the business associations are the key here, because if they show support and solidarity with President Erdogan in his statements and reactions against Turkey, Erdogan will be much stronger considering the elections coming up. And another result may be Turkey getting much closer with Russia over its policies for Syria, which the United States will not be welcoming, of course.
And Al Jazeera's Mohammed Ado is monitoring the situation in northern Syria from Gaziantep on the Turkey-Syria border.
We do not know what or which parts of any agreement the U.S. and Turkey had on Turkey taking a leading role in filling any void or vacuum left by the withdrawal of U.S. troops will create. Of course, Turkey had been raring to go, had been appealing to the United States for not only air support but also logistical support in taking on what it was calling terrorists that are lurking in Syria. Of course, to Turkey, there is no difference between ISIL and the Kurdish YPG and PKK fighters, who form the bulk of the fighters of the Syrian Democratic Forces, who have been a great ally of the United States in the fight against ISIL. Some of the fighting right now is going on in some remote districts like Hajin, right at the border between Syria and Iraq. And of course, if Turkey is maintaining that it will carry out an offensive against what's calling terrorist elements in Syria, either way, would that mean them attacking the forces who are currently engaged in the fight against ISIL? I'm talking about the SDF fighters who are Kurdish, mainly Kurdish. So it's going to be even more complicated from here on in.
In other world news, at least 15 people have been killed after a military plane crashed in Iran. It happened near Fath Airport, just west of the capital, Tehran. Iranian state television says severe weather may have played a role. The plane had been attempting to make an emergency landing. The U.S. Secretary of State has been meeting Saudi Arabia's leadership in Riyadh on the latest leg of his tour of the Middle East. Mike Pompeo has held talks with Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince, but he's cancelled his Kuwait leg of his trip to the Middle East to return to the U.S. for a family funeral. Earlier, Pompeo was in Qatar, where he reiterated that Washington will make sure Riyadh holds accountable those involved in the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Let's bring in Jamal El-Shail, who's been following developments for us from Kuwait City. Jamal, so Pompeo has met with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Do we know what's come out of their discussions?
Well, Fali, according to the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia, it tweeted in the past 40 minutes or so, quoting the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, saying that he had a very good meeting with King Salman, that they discussed many issues, he said, including Yemen, Iran and Afghanistan, and that Pompeo is grateful for Saudi Arabia's support for the political process both in Yemen and Afghanistan. He then shortly tweeted another one saying that he met with the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the prime suspect in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, but no mention in this tweet about the assassination of the Saudi journalist. Instead, he said, on Yemen, they agreed for the need of continued de-escalation and an adherence to the Sweden agreement. Sweden obviously has been the place where the peace talks have been taking place, and that there needs to be redeployment in Hodeidah, the port city that has seen maybe some of the fiercest fighting. So, as expected, at least publicly, Pompeo has not mentioned the case of Jamal Khashoggi, particularly because Mohammed bin Salman is seen as the prime suspect according to the CIA, the US's own intelligence agency. However, the Trump administration has, from the very beginning, made it very clear that it will give a higher importance to business deals and financial benefit to both the Trump administration and the US economy over the ethics that it espouses to adhere to in terms of its foreign policy, namely that of a free press and democracy. And therefore, there will be definitely criticism for the fact that Pompeo hasn't publicly spoken about that.
So, as far as we know, no mention publicly, at least, of Jamal Khashoggi. What about the GCC crisis, Jamal? When he was in Doha on Sunday, Pompeo had called for an end to the dispute between Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and the other countries that are blockading Qatar. Will he have reiterated this call in Riyadh today?
Well, there was a quiet murmurings between some of the officials, at least off the record in the region, and people that I've been speaking to the past couple of days, that maybe there was some sort of expectation, not necessarily that Pompeo's visit would come up with a solution to this 18-month-long crisis, essentially the blockading of Qatar and the collective punishment of its people by Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates in the lead, and then obviously Bahrain and Egypt. However, due to this bereavement in his family, he's cut his trip short. And what's significant about Pompeo not coming to Kuwait is that Kuwait has been the leading mediator, or at least leading in the attempts, albeit unsuccessfully, to mediate this crisis. Obviously, there is a valid reason in that there is that death there. However, people would say that maybe the fact that he's not leaving behind a delegation to continue the work to visit Kuwait is maybe an indication that there wasn't a breakthrough in trying to find a solution to this blockade. Having said that, the first part of his trip took place, and as we mentioned, there was talk of finding a solution to this crisis. Here's more from Hashim Al-Barra.
Mike Pompeo in Qatar with a message to Gulf countries to end their dispute, the worst political crisis in decades for the Gulf Cooperation Council.
President Trump and I both believe the ongoing dispute in the region has dragged on too long, and the dispute benefits adversaries and harms our mutual interests.
The Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, greeted Pompeo. After discussions with Qatar's Foreign Minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani, both countries say they are keen to consolidate trade and military cooperation. That includes expanding the largest US military base in the Middle East. Al-Udeid, near the capital Doha, is home to the forward operating base of US Central Command.
We've discussed all the issues of interest for our countries, regional issues starting with the Gulf Cooperation Council and the peace process in the Middle East, as well as the reconciliation in Afghanistan, as well as other issues such as Syria and counter-terrorism.
Pompeo landed in Qatar from the United Arab Emirates after visiting Egypt and Bahrain. He's flying to Saudi Arabia, which have all imposed their 18-month-long air, land and sea blockade on Qatar. They accuse Qatar of funding extremism, allegations strongly dismissed by Qatari leaders. America's top diplomat has also visited Jordan. and is due in Oman and Kuwait on his Middle East tour. It's being seen as an attempt to rally support among key players in the region to counterbalance the growing influence of Iran.
And I don't think that the administration plans for dealing with Iran by virtue of trying to organize a larger coalition are going to work, simply because most states do not agree with us and our policies, canceling the joint comprehensive plan of action that would have prevented Iran, if implemented, from ever obtaining a nuclear weapon.
The US is due to host a conference in Poland next month to discuss ways to curb Iran's activities in the region and ensure Middle East stability. The US is keen on building a regional alliance to counter what it considers to be a growing Iranian influence in the Gulf, but that may be impossible as long as the diplomatic crisis in the GCC continues. Habari, Al Jazeera, Doha.
A court in the Democratic Republic of Congo is expected to hear the case of presidential runner-up Martin Fayulu, who is challenging the election result. He's arguing for a manual recount. Harun Mutasa has more from Kinshasa.
Catholic priests asked their congregation to pray for peace in DRC as uncertainty grows over the disputed election result. The Catholic Church deployed 40,000 election observers on voting day last month. Their tally says opposition leader Martin Fayulu won 61% of the vote, almost twice as many as the official result of 34%. The presidential runner-up attended church on Sunday. He accuses Felix Tshisekedi of making a deal with the outgoing president, Joseph Kabila, to steal the election. Fayulu has gone to the Constitutional Court to appeal to judges to order a recount.
We have faith. Our faith is unshakable because the people have decided and the wishes of the people will come true. I am a man of faith.
The church is a respected institution in the DRC. When bishops speak, many people listen. The Catholic Church has influence here. Some bishops aren't afraid to speak out when others don't, but opinions are divided on whether the church should be involved in politics. At the largest Catholic church in the capital Kinshasa, religion and politics divide opinion.
I think the church's involvement in politics is right and normal. It should be done to help end political problems affecting our country.
According to me, I don't think that it's right for a church to get in those problems of politics because they are putting people in confusion.
Calls to end the political crisis are growing. The Southern African Development Community wants a recount of the votes or a government of national unity formed. The regional body's approval of the electoral process is crucial for the legitimacy of the government and the new president. Harun Mutasa, Al Jazeera, Kinshasa.
The leader of Venezuela's opposition, who was briefly detained on Sunday, has renewed his calls for a change of government. The dramatic arrest of Juan Guaido on a busy highway comes just days after he directly challenged the legitimacy of President Nicolas Maduro. Teresa Bol reports.
Juan Guaido arrived at La Guaira, the regional capital of Vargas State, surrounded by his supporters. The president of the almost powerless National Assembly was supposed to lead an open forum denouncing Nicolás Maduro as a dictator, when he was briefly detained by intelligence officers along the way.
Here are the symbols of oppression, but here today in La Guaira are the symbols of courage, of resistance, of strength. And if they want to send a message that we should hide, here is the answer of the people. Here we are.
His arrest provoked an outcry from the U.S. State Department and countries in the region that denounced the arbitrary detention.
Guaido's brief detention is likely to increase tensions between the government of Nicolás Maduro and the opposition that insists that it won't recognize Maduro as Venezuela's president. Guaido has already said that he's ready to take over as interim president and call for new elections.
But the National Assembly is considered to be in contempt by the administration that has already threatened to shut it down. They claim a coup is underway to remove Maduro from office.
A group of public servants acted unilaterally and carried out an irregular procedure against the Congressman Juan Guaido. This procedure, which is already completely over and done with, was put on as a show for the media.
Maduro's government has already detained and put on trial dozens of political opponents accused of plotting against him. Rafael Arrequesen's brother, has been imprisoned for 5 months. He's also a congressman accused by the government of being part of a conspiracy to kill the president.
The government says we are planning a coup, but they are the ones with guns, with the military. They want to blame us for the enormous crisis Venezuelans are going through, but everything that is happening is because of what they did and the policies they implemented.
Venezuela's opposition is divided and has lost power since the protests that shook this country in 2017. As the economic and political crisis deepens, many in Venezuela have lost hope that change is possible. Juan Guaido's detention may help the opposition gain the visibility it had lost. Teresa Bo, Al Jazeera, Caracas.
Still ahead on Al Jazeera, we'll tell you how Kenya is taking the threat from Al-Shabaab along its border with Somalia.
Hello there. The weather's still quite quiet for many of us across the southeastern parts of Asia. The satellite picture is showing most of the Philippines is without clouds at the moment. There's just the odd shower in the far south, and we're also seeing plenty of sunshine across many parts of Vietnam too. We do have this little area of cloud that's making its way towards us. Might bring us the odd shower on Tuesday, I think most likely as we head into Wednesday. Further south though, that's where there are more showers. So across Borneo we'll see a few thunderstorms bubble up during the day, and they'll generally track their way towards the west. So we could well catch one or two in Singapore and KL as well. Now down towards Australia, we've seen some rather violent thunderstorms over the past 24 hours. This is the latest batch now working their way away from us, but there's still the risk of seeing one or two showers here as we head through the next few days. That area of cloud also links back towards the southern parts of Western Australia, so there could be the odd spot of rain here. But what you'll really notice is the temperatures in Adelaide. They're pretty high at the moment, 38 degrees on Tuesday. And they're not coming down any time in the near future either. So for Wednesday, it'll be 39, another hot day on the cards for us. Over towards New Zealand, plenty of sunshine here. Perhaps a few showers in the north of the North Island, though. 22 is a maximum in Auckland. That's not too bad. That's 72 in Fahrenheit.
This whole cleansing thing, I mean, what do? You undress and then you got that poor muti all over you. Yeah, something like that.
It's cute how you fight this like a little girl in love.
I'm not a little girl, and this is not love.
Relax, kick off your shoes. Or do you have something better in mind than watching HMEs? My mother, your favorite.
I kan nie meer net die heeltyd hier wees en seker maak almal kry hulle flippin' omelette nie. We need to decide on a launch date.
Oh, no, we're actually doing that next week.
What? When did you decide that?
The more I speak to her, I realize, The crushes that I've leased out to SG.
You want to borrow our mining equipment for your ANSI client? I can see what I can do for you. I mean,
No,
the work
no,
around it's okay. Indra, can we keep this between you and me?
Hendrik's worried that production levels will drop.
You know I'd do anything for you.
Except for this.
Lincoln.
I was thinking you should come visit sometime. Come over for lunch.
Visit.
Isidingo the Need, leo saa 1:30 usiku.
Iran's capital, Tehran. State television says severe weather may have played a role. The plane had been attempting to make an emergency landing. And the U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, has met with Saudi Arabia's king and the Crown Prince in Riyadh as part of the latest leg of his Middle East tour. He's said to have discussed the threat from Iran and the war in Yemen. Pompeo, according to the State Department, stressed on the need to de-escalate military operations in Yemen and implement the truce agreed in Sweden last month. Well, for more on this, let's speak to Ibrahim Fayyad, who's an associate professor of conflict resolution at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Ibrahim, thank you again for being with us. So Pompeo and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, according to the State Department, agreeing on de-escalating the military operations in Yemen. But does that mean ending Saudi Arabia's involvement in Yemen?
Not necessarily. The United States finds itself in a huge dilemma with war in Yemen. First of all, there is a huge pressure, domestic pressure, especially from the Congress, on the U.S. administration to end its involvement with the Yemeni war through the support or the direct support of the
of Saudi Arabia in the war in Yemen due to many reasons, among them ethical reasons and the war and the results and the disasters that this war has resulted in. And on the other hand, there is the U.S. administration's clear agenda about arms sales that Trump made it so clear many times, he's not shying about it, that through this arms sales, through the involvement or the support to Saudi's position in the war in Yemen, they can sell more arms, and which is something that the U.S. administration wants to do. So it's between the arms sales and the domestic pressure from the Congress. That's where the U.S. administration finds itself. The solution to this, making these diplomatic statements about the need to de-escalate, but how much this translates to action, not much.
Yeah, so they talked about Yemen, they talked about Iran, of course, but no mention, as of yet anyway, from what we're hearing from the State Department, no mention publicly at least of the Gulf crisis, the GCC crisis. When he was in Doha, Mike Pompeo said that it was time to end this GCC crisis. But how much of a priority is that really for the